Hey guys, welcome back again. Today, we got a little rain issue. You can probably hear it from the roof. You'll have to bear with me. It's going to be a little bit harder to hear me. But we drug this thing out. I figured it'd be a good time to start with it. We got rain for like the next 3-4 days. So, get this thing up and going. Leave that bed over there because I got to do some priming on it. Don't want to do it with moisture in the air. So, you guys already seen the carburetor for this bike. We're going to do a walk around, take a look at everything, show you what we got planned, and get right to work. So, let's hop into it. Alrighty guys, we got a 2000 cr125, and this thing started its life as a project bike. I only gave $500 for it, and it did not look in near this good a shape. Pretty much everything you can imagine was worn out on this bike. I'm talking wheel bearings, suspension bearings, the whole motor was trashed from the water pump all the way down to the cylinder head. Lots of problems, suspension blown, brakes didn't work, but I blew that thing apart all the way down to bare frame. Got it fixed up, got it looking real good, and got down to the jetting phase of it. And you ain't gonna believe me when I tell you this, but this carburetor here is a Kian. It says Kian PWK, looks just like an original. This was actually a Chinese carburetor. I started putting a different slide in it. I was having problems with mid-range and the needle adjustment wouldn't do anything. An OEM slide would not fit in there. Got to looking at all the jets and everything, no numbers on it, which is a clear sign of a Chinese. All the OEMs got numbers, so you know when you're jetting it, you know what you can switch them to. So I bought a Mikuni, just like this one over here, put on it. I did get the jetting going, but it was so low compression by that point, I had to put starting fluid in it just to get it to pop off. Once it started, it would run fine, I could ride it, but I was really worried about causing any more damage. So this thing is sit for probably, I'm going to say a little over a year now. So slowly started ordering parts for it. That was a parts carburetor. I talked about it in the last video. I actually got another used carburetor now. Got a whole box of goodies. Carb kit, new carburetor, piston rings. Everything should be good. Got a new cylinder over there, getting a little bit of porting work done on it. So hopefully that'll open this old bike up, make it run a little bit better. So that's going to be the main thing. First step, let's get this thing stripped down, get that motor apart, and then I'll catch up with you guys then. Alrighty, it amazes me on these race bikes how quick they come apart. Once you take them apart several times, you learn how everything comes off together and you know what pieces come off first. Pretty slick getting ready to get started on this motor, but I'm going to take a little break and show you guys what we got going on with this cylinder over here. Here's this cylinder over here, and it's kind of weird having a little bit of help in the garage today. My brother was kind enough to come over and help me out. He's doing a little bit of mild porting on this. And what he's got going on, he's smoothing this all out. You can see how smooth he's got that compared to this side. The casting's pretty rough on these cylinders. You can see, especially right there, big casting imperfections. The smoother you have this, the better the gases can flow through there, the better his motor's gonna run. Yeah, hit that impact one more time. You can see what he's doing over here with the gasket. Put it on here. Well, if I put it on the right way. There we are. Put that on there, and he started marking with the magic marker there what extra meat he has left over. That's what he's going to do on this side, is take a little bit of that out, and then he'll do the same thing on the engine cases, and he'll have all this matched up perfect, so you don't have any lips that fuel's hitting. Should flow nice, be nice and smooth. Maybe a little bit of performance gains, you know, we'll just have to see when we get this thing together. So let's get back to work. Hey guys, I wanted to point out one thing real quick. I took the circlips off this and I shoved rags all down around the rod and even over here where the power valve linkage is at. Main reason is you drop that circlip down in that motor, you're going to have a heck of a time getting it out. A 2-stroke is a little bit better than a 4-stroke. 4-stroke gets down in that transmission, you're never getting that thing out unless you split the case. So definitely I always make sure to cover up every little hole that circlip can go in. And 9 times out of 10, you're gonna pull it out and never have a problem. But if you drop it that one time, boy, you're gonna have a bad day. So let's get back at it. All right, I got a little bit more talking to do, and then I'll throw you guys back in time lapse. I got this thing pulled apart. See that piston? It had been getting pretty hot, scored up. Don't really look the best. The head was brand new. I had to replace it because you know how people are that work on things. You can see on this cylinder, they drove a screwdriver in at one time trying to get the head off this cylinder. They had boogered it up. The head was beyond repair. That's why I replaced it whenever I rebuilt the motor the first time. And I had pulled all them studs out and resurfaced that. And I'm looking now, and I can see a little bit of a low area here between my water jacket and my cylinder. I think I was bypassing some compression into there because this bike had real bad low compression problems. And the ring, I just put it in the cylinder. The ring gap was not bad. I don't think that ring is wore that bad. The cylinder don't look the best. There's a couple areas you can see. Well, you guys can't see, you just have to trust me. There's a couple areas in there I can catch with a fingernail where it's scored up. So definitely had to replace this. Probably leaking compression up there. So I'm going to throw this back into time lapse because I got to pull all these studs out, the power valve and everything, and get it put in my new cylinder. So I'll catch up with you guys once I get that done. Alrighty, so besides this gasket being a giant pain in my butt trying to scrape it off, I got some bad news. I started rolling this crank around. Look at that oil on it. You guys see that? So it kind of led me to believe that maybe I might have a crank seal out. Like my brother suggested, maybe I got a crack or a seal between the cases, not sealed up, letting oil in there. But then he also had a good point. With this thing being low on compression, it might have been pulling up fuel in the bottom, and this thing sits so long, I don't know if the fuel could have evaporated out, and maybe that's my two-stroke oil. I really don't know for sure. I did drain my motor oil out here. I saved a little bit to look at it. It's pretty dark. I put some on my finger and was putting it on the crank, looking at it compared to what's on the other side. And it looks a little different, so I don't believe it's motor oil. I tried smelling it. I can't really tell. So I think the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to fill up the crankcase with gas, because for one thing, I'd want to get all that oil out. So I'm going to put straight gas in there, let it sit for a little bit, open my drain up, see if I'm getting gas into the motor, which should let me know if my crank seal's leaking or maybe my case halves are leaking. So I don't know, that's a bummer, but I'll catch you guys up when we figure out what's going on. Oh yeah, that's looking good. Had a little problems with the power valve. They had it together wrong. I took it apart and I even went back and watched old video, and they had the washer underneath this nut, and that was supposed to go on the back of this, which helped that spring out. I kept popping that out of that spring. It was not in the spring whenever I took it apart. So they totally had that wrong. That should be right now. Power valve is acting nice and free. So we're in pretty good shape now. we're going to keep on going and get this head put on. Alrighty guys, I think we're going to call it a night on this old bike. I got the whole motor together, pretty happy with how everything's going. I forgot to show it, but where I was worried about the oil earlier, I did fill that crankcase all the way up with gas, rotated the crank around, let it sit, never seen no bubbles. And gas being thinner, you would think it would bypass through the seal, or if I had a problem with the cases, you think it'd be bypassing a little quicker. Never seen nothing happen. And I even pulled my oil cap off, had my blowgun, I set my air compressor down to a real low pressure, started pressurizing that crankcase, or the transmission case. I'd never seen any bubbles coming up in the gas, so I wasn't getting any air coming from my case cavity up into it. So that should have kind of checked for my crank seal and the case halves. So I think that's good, I hope so. But the funny thing is I kicked this thing over just 2 or 3 times to check compression. It popped off. I couldn't believe it. I guess just the residual gas in there, even though I turned the motor over and dumped it out. The thing hit, kind of started just for a split second. Kind of scared me. I was not expecting it at all. So it's good to know this thing wants to run. So main thing I'm stopping on is this upper mount here. All 3 bolts are different. I'm going to go get 3 of the same bolts tomorrow. Just, I don't know, make me feel better about it, I guess. But once that's bolted in, all my coolant lines are done. I know it's getting sparked because the motor popped off. Got to put coolant in it, got to put oil in it, and rebuild that carburetor, and we should be ready for a first start. So we'll see you guys in the morning. Alrighty, we're back here the next day. Time to get started back on this bike. I did get me some new bolts picked up for that top motor mount. All of them are the same size. They're actually going to be the right length. Not going to have, you know, no thread at all showing. Them nuts were barely even on them other bolts. So all around bad deal. Then we're going to work out good. And got me some sweet new super fuel. And I do believe these bikes are supposed to be ran off 32-to-1. But we're going to try 40-to-1 because it's got flames on it. I mean, that's a good sign. This thing ought to run like a dream with it. So big thing is get the motor mount bolted up, get that carburetor rebuilt, and maybe we'll get to see this thing start today. About to start getting this carburetor put back together. I got my new to me carburetor here, got the old one over there, and I just started kind of comparing things to see where I was at. This slide is a 5.0, it came on this carburetor. It's in excellent shape, everything looks good. This was my scored up slide, and it was a 5.5, so I don't believe that was the original slide anyway. That's probably why they were trying to modify it. So happy I got this, so I got myself a good slide now. The needles in the kit was the same as the needle that was in it, so I'm going to run the new needle. Everything should be good. Went ahead and pulled the needle and seat out. I'm going to replace them. Got a new one over there in the kit. And then my pilot jet and my main jet is where I'm running into what I'm trying to go on the safe side. This one that came in the kit is a 380. I had a 380 over there, wrote down for my old bike. Well, the old carburetor that was on this bike when it ran good. This carburetor had a 350 in it, and the internet recommends a 350, but I would rather be a little bit rich and try to jet it leaner than to be too lean and have to get richer, you know, especially with that new rebuild. Same thing with the pilot. This is a 45 here. That's what I had wrote down that was in my bike. The kit came with a 40. So I'm not going to run the 40, I'm going to run the 45, and once I break it in, if I can't adjust out, if it's got a bog or anything, then I will start going leaner. I got the jets to go leaner with it. But other than that, everything looks pretty good. Went over. The body of this carburetor is great. The seller I got it from on eBay really took their time. They cleaned it up. Everything was awesome. The only thing I did notice is taking it apart, a lot of the jets and stuff wasn't much more than finger tight. They just kind of threw this carburetor together. So if a guy put that straight on a bike, you would have had some problems. Other than that, real happy. So I got some new gaskets. That's for my float bowl. So we'll see if we can't get this thing assembled and get it put back on the bike. Going to show you guys real quick too. I've always been told on these float levels, you want that float even with the bottom of your float bowl. And if you can see this one, it's ran downhill. So I'm going to go ahead and bend this tab just a little bit, see if I can't change that float level. Oh yeah, that's a lot better. All right, let's continue. I'm out of time today, so I can't get this thing all the way together to get it started up, but I did do the next best thing. Got coolant in it, got engine oil in it, exhaust on it, carb on it. I took a little syringe I had, got some fuel in the carburetor, so we'll just crank it over a few times, see if we can't get it to fire up. Should run a little bit on the fuel in the carburetor, and then, yeah, make me sleep better tonight, so we will see if this thing's going to start. Well, you can't beat that for a first start. 3 kicks, it fired right up. I thought with as much oil as I put in the cylinder, lubing everything up, I'd have a little more problems. But fired right off, even started idling. I'm going to have to tweak that carburetor just a little bit. But, hey, that ain't nothing too bad. I mean, at least we got a good starting point. Definitely has a lot more compression what this motor had when we started. So, pretty neat. This old bike's just been kind of one of them frustrating projects I've had because everything that could possibly be wrong with this bike was wrong. Being this old, this many people working on it, boy, they've had a lot of stuff rigged, just like the power valve being together wrong, driving screwdrivers between the head and the cylinder. I mean, it had a lot of problems. So to get it back to this point, that's pretty neat. The big holdup we're having now is this expansion chamber. I had a lot of problems getting it up in there on the cylinder. You can see my Kickstarter's hitting it. There's a coolant line back here that comes off of the head. You kind of see the radiator clamp down there, loops around, it's hitting it. So I think I need to take my time. I bent on it a little bit, trying to get it a little bit better, but I think I need to take some time, get this thing straightened out, so I'm not having any clearance problems, and then the rest of this bike's going to fly together. It looks like I got half a bike, but 20 minutes you could have this whole thing together, so we might even clean it up a little bit, because man, when this thing was cleaned up, it looks super good. Just a little dusty, a little rough now, so might do a little polishing on it. We'll just see what we get into, so let's get at it. Alrighty, starting to get some big improvements going on here. These mounts never lined up good on this exhaust, and I always kind of planned on getting another expansion chamber, but I thought I'd give it one more whack trying to get it straightened up, and I still eventually will get another silencer. But I've bent this thing and put it on 10, 15 times, and I finally got it to where that mount's lining up pretty slick. That one's lining up pretty slick. My radiator hose here, I'm going to trim a little bit off of it, and once I do, I believe I'm going to have a little bit of clearance on it. The Kickstarter still hits. Probably just going to work that dent on over a little bit to give it a little bit more clearance, and it's not right, but it's a lot better than what it was. Back here where my silencer goes on was way over here by the subframe and caused me to melt the side plate just a little bit, so that looks a lot better. I'm going to call that a win. Take this off one more time, shorten this hose up to get it off this expansion chamber just a little bit, and we'll keep on moving on. Well guys, we got just a few more things to bolt on this bike, but what I want to go ahead and do is get some fuel put in this tank and go ahead and do one more heat cycle. I was trying to show you a little bit putting the tank on, but dropped the camera, dropped the tank, got gas on the camera, so long story short, I got mad, put the tank on, and now I picked the camera up, start videoing again. But we got some of this good fuel. Fill that up. We'll go ahead and kickstart it one more time. Let it warm all the way up. Just getting a little over an idle. Shut her back down. Let it cool off while I bolt the rest of this stuff on. And then, yeah, should be ready to go. Maybe we'll clean up on this. I don't know what we'll do, but we'll just see then. I tell you guys, every time I look at this bike, I think a guy really needs to have his butt kicked to build this nice of a bike and then let it get as dirty as what it is. I mean, this thing just, it looks roached. But maybe this sound makes me feel a little bit better. Now I am sorry, I know this is going to make a lot of you guys flinch, but I am getting a new expansion chamber, so just keep that in mind. Now I got my clearance here. I got a little bit of slop here on this Kickstarter. I'm going to take it off, see if I can get that taken care of. I just didn't want to hear this thing slapping and rattling against this the whole time I rode it. I will get a new expansion chamber, which will take care of this problem completely, but for now, I might have to smack this a little bit more, but for now, that dent ought to do. So let's get at it. Alrighty, here is the plan. Kickstarter's apart. What I got going on here is the aluminum is just worn out. This is steel, so obviously that is not going to wear out. All my wear is in there, but it's only front to back. It's not side to side that way. So what I'm planning on doing, taking some flat metal I got, cut it, bend it, just put it on one side like a little bit of a bushing, reassemble this thing and see how she works out. Little bushing made, everything's cleaned up, Kickstarter and vise. I'll let you guys know if I had success. Super happy with the way that turned out. I got all my slack taken out, made my dent a little bit bigger so that ain't going to be sitting there pinging off it. I am going to replace this, so I'm not too worried about that. I really want to start riding this thing a little bit. This thing coming from a $500 bike to what it is now, I've had to dump a lot of money into it. And I really would like to ride it because, boy, it'd be bad to find out that transmission ain't shifting or something comes apart down in the bottom end, because that's the only thing I did not do to this bike is split the cases. The crank felt good, so I didn't really see the need to split them, but you always got that in the back of your head. You're worried because you never laid eyes on it. But I hate to end this with this bike dirty, dusty like this, but we have got a bunch of rain, so I can't really get it out and ride it. I know this video is getting long, so we're just going to cut it off there. Maybe the beginning of the next square body video, we'll wash this thing up, maybe take a few laps on the track, see what it'll do. But other than that, until next time, we'll see you guys later.